Moving on to Neometals. Neometals is a leading provider of innovative recycling solutions, supplying recycled materials to the battery metals industry. Yes, there's a theme tonight. It's listed in Australia on the ASX and London on AIM with a market cap currently of £102 million. The company has developed a suite of battery metals processing technologies that reduce reliance on traditional mining and processing. Neometals currently has 3 battery metals JVs, all commercialising proprietary, low-cost, low-carbon process technologies in incorporated joint ventures with a clear pathway to profitability. We're joined from Perth, Australia tonight by Jeremy McManus, and he's the General Manager at Neometals. Welcome, Jeremy.
Duncan, thank you for the introduction, and look, thanks everyone for your interest. So what I'm hoping to do is we're listed on the ASX and also on AIM. We're flying under the radar a little bit on AIM, so it's a pleasure to give you an overview more generally of the business, but then I'm going to dive down specifically on how we're building a world-leading lithium battery recycling solution, and we're doing it in Europe to start with. Now, let's make sure these slides are moving for me. So I've got a bit of a standard disclaimer here, but maybe some context around me. I'm a general manager for Neometals. I'm tasked with looking after, amongst other things, the investor relations function, but my career has been in and around minerals and materials for the entire time. That's fortuitous, shares some parallels with what Neometals is actually doing. And, we heard from a graphite upstream story just before this. So we share some parallels, but unlike a single commodity deposit, we're looking to pursue multiple materials which we're extracting out of feedstocks that are above the ground. So there's no mining risk. It's an urban mining opportunity, if you like. And so, look, diving into this, what Neometals has done is we've developed a suite of mineral processing technologies over the journey. Those technologies underpin the 3 business units you can see in that diagram on the right-hand side. And with those technologies, we're applying those in order to recycle materials from batteries, as it were. We're looking to recover materials and to downstream process. So, really there's 4 things about the business that I want to highlight. The first being that we're enabling the production of sustainable materials and, supporting that transition to a circular economy. 2, in chasing, carbon benefits, if you like, through R&D, we've managed to really drag down our operating costs. 3, we've got tier 1 customers, the likes of Mercedes and some very strong partners. And then number 4, we've got, and this is a real key distinguishing factor about our business, is very flexible business models where we're targeting technology licensing and a royalty business model. So if I look really quickly at those 4 things, so I talk to sustainability. We're very much walking the talk in this regard. So not only are we looking to produce materials that make green applications, but the way we're doing it through the R&D and our processing technologies really underpins the sustainability of what we're doing. We've got some accolades on the right hand side there. Best technology in the AIM Awards in 22 and secured the green economy mark. So we're also getting some ESG ratings starting to filter through, which is nice. The second thing I mentioned to you, and this probably relates to sustainability still, is this whole drive towards net zero, if you like, is pushing for more and more battery materials. The image on the left-hand side shows you there's going to be deficits in the future. That this image on the left, battery gigafactory capacity, which just means more batteries are to be made. With that, there's going to be more cells, there's going to be more production scrap and more end-of-life batteries that need to find a home. And in chasing these technologies, the image on the right just shows you we've got this broad exposure to the key metals of the energy transition. So 5 of those key 6 we speak for, and in fact 4 of them come from a recycling project alone. Operating cost and carbon advantages, I mentioned those. On the left-hand side, what you're looking at there is an image showing you all of our costs over the amount of lithium that we produce, just as an example. And when you look at it like that, we're in the lowest cost quartile, about $27 per unit of LCE, and that's quite extraordinary. On the left-hand side, it's just giving you a bit of a representation about the carbon that we can save. Because if you generate raw materials from a mine, if you can see my cursor, you've got this bigger bar with virgin raw materials. If you generate those same materials from recycling an old battery, for example, you're going to save, circa 70% of your embedded CO2. And this is really significant for, say, a car manufacturer that needs to make their vehicle greener, particularly for the second round of cars they make, or in fact the batteries that they're making to put in those cars. And then lastly, flexible business models here. We're happy to act as principal. We're happy to act in partnership. But ideally, we're looking to supply plant packages and license the technology for royalty income. And that particular business model has allowed us to attract some pretty significant partners and customers. So these 3 pillars on the left-hand side is our recycling business unit. I'll talk more to this, but obviously we've got Mercedes and Steel Company of Canada as customers. To the right here, vanadium recovery is our second business unit. That's all about pulling vanadium out of steel waste. That waste for our initial project is to come from SSAB, a big Scandinavian steelmaker. The offtake's going to Glencore, who everybody knows. And then the third project, and I'm going to park these 2 and concentrate on recycling in a second, is our lithium chemical business. It's a joint venture with a very big Aussie company called Mineral Resources. And together we're looking to joint venture with Portugal's largest chemical conglomerate. So again, using one of our technologies to produce battery raw materials and do it in a very green fashion. So look, I'll dive now into the battery recycling. This has been a 7-year journey for Neometals. We've developed our technology initially for consumer electronic chemistries. That evolved. We redesigned the flow sheet for car batteries when we saw the sheer volume and the application of lithium ion coming on. And somewhere along the journey, we attracted the attention of a very big German company called SMS. We formed a 50-50 joint venture with SMS called Primobious. And so Primobious, the joint venture company, is solely responsible for the global rollout. And at the moment, we're at an inflection point there, starting to earn first revenues and, building an order book. So exciting times for Primobious. Just to give you a bit of background, why do we even bother considering recycling lithium batteries? And, there's a couple of reasons. Ignoring the fact that the batteries catch on fire often if you do nothing with them. Ignoring the fact that you can't put them in landfill for the fact they're hazardous and that, the constituents are worth a lot of money. OEMs really need a sustainable supply of these battery materials going forward with a low carbon footprint. And recycling batteries is a fantastic way to generate those materials sustainably. So historically, OEMs, original equipment manufacturers, they never had to worry about the fuel that went in their combustion engine vehicles. That situation's changed now. The fuel for an electric vehicle, it is the lithium, which shuttles electrons around as you charge and discharge in the battery. The images that you're looking at, on the left, we're just trying to portray here the supply deficits that we're likely to see. So the big blue bar in the middle, that's demand for lithium units in 2030. Big demand, big shortfall in 2030 based on the supply that's available. It's predominantly coming from mine supply. The image on the right just shows you that towards about 2040, mine supply, which is where the materials come from now is going to be surpassed by recycled materials, and the majority of the demand is going to come, in this example, which focuses on lithium, will come from recycling in the future. So, look, one of the other reasons for recycling is it's a regulatory imperative. In Europe, the European battery regulations have just been passed into law. In the USA, it will follow. This is inevitable, this sort of regulation. It's a very important tailwind for both Neometals and Primobious. A little bit of a busy slide, but what it's telling you here is that through this regulation, you've got minimum recycling recovery rates, and they increase over time from 27 to 2031. So Primobious is achieving those based on our demonstration work to date, and I'll show you some pictures of that. But also the battery regs are saying that future battery cell production is going to need to be recycled content. That too will ratchet up. You need compulsory carbon footprints, etc. So these are phenomenal tailwinds for Neometals, and they really enforce the fact that you need recycling going forward. And how do we actually do this? So the image on the left is a little schematic showing you the process that Neometals developed and is now licensed to the Primobious joint venture. So it's a two-step process. You can take modules and cells of almost any denomination, if you like, but we're really targeting NMC chemistries in the vehicles and consumer electronics. You go through a three-stage process. First, you dismantle and you discharge the batteries. Two, the second stage is mechanical. We smash up, if you like, the batteries through shredding units, and what comes out then are the plastics, the steel casings, the foils that have the anode and the cathode on them, and we can sell those materials. If we owned the plants, we can sell those materials for money. If somebody else owns the plants and we're licensing the technology, they can either do the exact same or they stockpile the materials for their future need if they're making batteries or vehicles. What you generate through that first spoke step is a black mass intermediate. It's got all the valuable cathode materials in it, plus the graphite, which makes it black. And then we go through a hydromet recycling process to sequentially pull out the valuable stuff, the nickel, the cobalt, the manganese, the lithium, and we get left with the graphite material. And so on the right-hand side, what we're trying to show here is if you're a car maker, you've got two choices with regards to recycling, or three. One is you do it yourself, and that's complicated because these companies, they're trying to figure out raw materials and mining, which they never had to do. Now they're having to make their own batteries. And so recycling for many is probably a step too far. So their alternatives are to pay a merchant recycler who will take their batteries, buy them off them, and tick the recycling box. Or alternatively, you can use a company like ourselves. We're the only ones offering plant supply and technology licensing. And the benefit to doing that is we allow an OEM to keep their materials. They retain them, and as a result, they can see an economic benefit. They can turn a cost center from recycling, having to pay someone else, into a profit center. And that essentially is the business model for Primobious. The economics are really strong. The image on the left is a bit busy, so I'll let people look at that in due course. But on the right-hand side, we've done some cost studies for both the shredding spoke and the refining hub that I just mentioned in that diagram. And we've done this image shows you what the contained value of the constituents of these batteries looks like for the different chemistries. So if you cast your eyes to the bar on the far right, that's what the future holds with something called NMC 811. And our costs are just above $4,000 US. You can see the contained value there, is up around 9,000. So you've got about a $5,000 margin per ton, just to put that in context. So if you have, like our studies have shown, a 20,000 ton per annum plant, you're looking at making 100 million per annum profit, just to give you a broad idea. So what we do with the flexible business models that I mentioned is we're happy to act as principal, and in fact, we're doing it now in Germany. I'll show you some pictures in a second. We turned our demonstration facility into an actual commercial shredding operation. Very happy to act in partnership, particularly if our customer is big enough to justify sharing in the economics with the capex of the plants. But our preferred model is number 3, where we provide plant equipment packages and we license the technology to generate very stable royalty earnings. So, looking to build a portfolio, if you like. That's gone a bit mad, excuse me. So now to our partner. I talked about this 7-year journey. We drew the attention of the SMS Group, a very, very big private plant builder, 150-year-old, 14,000 employees. There's a ghost in the system moving my slides, but maybe my viewers can't actually see that jumping around. And look, they've got facilities in Europe, China, India, and where we've built our demonstration facility, you can see the images on the right-hand side. So that's Primobious, the plant in Germany. It's to the east of Dusseldorf. And the 2 pictures, you can see our shredding spoke and also the refining hub. So the shredding spoke is a commercial operation, albeit small, 10 tonne per day, and the refining hub acts as a demo facility for R&D. So if we ever want to run customer trials, we can put them through the shredding spoke, through the refiner, and spit out products for qualification discussions, for example. So big group, we were happy to enter into a joint venture with them because we offer significant synergies to one another. So look, in terms of what we're targeting and why here, the image on the left shows you that the supply of batteries available for recycling globally is going to grow at a very fast rate. Initially, the smaller volumes come from processing scrap from factories, failed QA, QC, returns on the factory floor, but then the far bigger volumes are coming from end of life when the vehicles, dare I say it, have crashes, have warranty returns, or just naturally reach the end of their lives. On the right-hand side, that image shows you we designed our 20,000 tonne per annum plant, which is step 1 for us to round the scrap from a traditional gigafactory, like what they've done in Nevada with Tesla. But the bigger goal is to accommodate for the end-of-life batteries and have plants 10 times that size, which we're studying right now. So look, in terms of the customers and how we actually turn this into money. So our first customers is a decent one that everyone should have heard of, Mercedes-Benz. We have collaboration with Mercedes. It's a 5-year arrangement where our engineers will enter into their facilities. We are supplying the plant and equipment for a pilot facility in Kuppenheim, Germany for Mercedes. We were just awarded the contract for the shredding spoke. Touch wood, very shortly we'll receive the same purchase order for the refining hub. And the reason this is so exciting, apart from the brand recognition and the validation that Merck provide, is that Mercedes, like other car companies, are going to be cell manufacturers themselves. So come 2040, if you cast your eyes to the right, Mercedes, which is not the biggest car maker, will have a recycling requirement of nearly 1 million tonnes per annum. So if you just pause for a second and think about the study that we did at 20,000 tonnes, this is 1 million tonnes for, not the biggest car company globally. And what that looks like is 5 of the big 200,000 tonne per annum plants, which I mentioned, or a very vast number of the 20,000 tonne per annum plants, which we've done a study on. So this is the end goal for us, to stay connected, do a good job for Mercedes, and get embedded. I mean, of course, we can't do everything for them globally, but we look to try and get a large share of that. So that's the prize. The second customer, where there's the opportunity for a future North American continental network, is with the Steel Company of Canada. And a steel company might sound like a strange customer and a partner, but Steel Company of Canada is transitioning to making more steel using electric arc, which is a lot greener than blast furnace. To do that, they need more scrap steel. Their feedstock comes from old vehicles, and increasingly in the future, those vehicles will come with lithium-ion batteries. So the partnership that we have, they're presently licensing our technology for a rollout in America with a view to many plants, a centralized hub and a network of spokes to smash up the batteries, neutralize the fire risk, and transport to the hubs. And they are already getting their steel from some very big North American car manufacturing names. So the idea is that in the future, they will have a recycling subsidiary. We have an option to enter the fray with them. And if we don't end up doing that and taking a joint venture stake, we will just continue with the license that we have on a 10% gross revenue royalty basis. So that's very exciting in North America. And that actually will be our first 20,000 tonne per annum plant. So I mentioned that we're growing a royalty portfolio, if you like. It's almost the recycling version of Franco-Nevada, if all things go well. The image shows you we've already got some existing licenses out there in Europe, all of which are based on a 10% gross revenue royalty. So this is exciting. We're looking to exploit the technology ourselves, but also with some licensees generating royalty revenue for us. And so that's already underway. And really what you're looking at for the recycling business unit is a very catalyst-rich timeline for us. On the far left, we've delivered on the hub economics. We put out this study, so now analysts have the ability to start to value us. And there's some folks in the UK writing research at present, the Royal Bank of Canada and Cenkos. That's worth a look to get a sense of how they feel and what assumptions they're making. But then going forward from here, we expect the purchase order for the Mercedes hub in the near future. We will then look to provide the plant and equipment for the spoke that we've just done the deal with Mercedes on. Look to do the very same thing with Stelco, but that plant will be, an order of magnitude bigger. That will be 50 tonnes per day. And then we roll it out like this: spoke first, hub second, Mercedes, Stelco, and then look to reveal who else is in our business pipeline, which is getting very full, and the order book is starting to get significant. So watch this space on our timeline and us delivering on some of those outcomes. And to cap off on Primobious, which is obviously one of 3 business units, we've got some pretty significant customers and partners, and that's part of the Neometals ethos, to work with partners to fast track things, to get the scale right. And we've done it successfully in the past with our mining operations at Mount Marion. The economics for recycling are terrific. It's sort of a no question asked on the environmental credentials associated with that. Really big addressable market. We're exposed to a basket of battery metals. And I think the key thing here is we are different from the peer group, and there are others. It's not a winner takes all. We are not the only ones with a 2-stage sort of liquid-based solution to this. And the reason we do it is to get very high recoveries, which the world's demanding right now. But our business model is different. It's different for the fact that we're not just saying, you must work with us as a merchant and you pay us, or rather we pay you for batteries and then we keep the products. We're saying we're happy to be flexible, but we would like to deliver the plant and license the technology, and that will enable you as a customer to keep the raw materials. And that is critical for the OEMs and the cell makers, because if they're looking out 10 years, which they do as very large companies, they need absolute certainty over where the raw materials come from. And look, really, I'll just leave you with this. This is the Neometals highlights, because of course we didn't talk about the other two projects in detail, but of course the business is enabling this generation of sustainable battery materials. They're all going to be in short supply. Big addressable market, but we're looking to produce in the lowest cost quartile, really low carbon products. We have done this before working with partners. I mentioned Mount Marion. You know, there are elements of that, even though it was an upstream operation, that we can apply as a cookie cutter. And we've got some very big validation from customers. So that's, hopefully I haven't run over time, but I wanted to give everyone a high level overview of what we're doing. It's the sort of story that's got a few moving parts, so we'd really welcome any inquiry, both now, Duncan, from any questions you've got, but obviously, you know, we're listed, we've got a very detailed website, very welcome to reach out to us.
Gee, Jeremy, that was absolutely fantastic. I'm afraid you were so detailed, you answered just about every question I'd written down. So you packed a lot of information in, and that was fantastic. Now let me just start again then, given that I don't have any questions. Where did that strategy evolve from? Because that's a very considered strategy. You've thought through that incredibly carefully. It's a big jump to go where the market's not. And yet that's you. You're unique. There's only you. Build plant, royalty streams, and then off you go. Where did that come from?
Yeah, look, it evolved for sure. I mean, we thought similarly to some of our peer group, if you like. I mean, they're not so much competitors because, as I mentioned, we really are the only ones offering these plant packages at this stage. But we quickly determined that what a lot of the OEMs want in the recycling world is often they need to show their stakeholders that they are taking an active measure themselves and looking after, you know, their own requirements. But this criticality around sourcing raw materials and having absolute certainty, because if you pay someone to recycle, you will acquit your recycling responsibility, no question. You don't need to buy the plant, so that's no doubt attractive to some. But you don't have absolute certainty because these hydromet refineries, much like the base metal circuits for mining companies, they need to be fed all the time. You can't have days where they're shut down. You don't shut them down. So if there's a challenge with a merchant recycler needing to find feedstocks, which there will be because they're hotly sought after, then you have a challenge as an OEM and a risk. So we saw that and said, look, we want to satisfy what the customers need. Let's supply plant packages because actually our partner, that's what they do for a living, and that's half the reason we partnered with them, because being able to generate in-house the design and the plant packages was a big benefit for us and gives us some kudos in the market. So it evolved like that with recycling, but similarly, the other business units, the same applies really with a view to licensing technologies where it makes sense and where we can, and therefore start to generate some royalty income from multiple sources. So they're growth stories. It's like having a mine that has, more resource at depth, or, you're looking to acquire your neighbour's property, but we don't need to do that because the technology can be applied to multiple sites, for example, or technologies plural.
So, Jeremy, you think this actually it adapts very nicely to the OEM manufacturing model of just-in-time manufacturing?
Yeah, look, I think so, for sure. There's parallels, and our business model, understandably, there will be several recycling players, no doubt, having success. We need an industry. It's a very big addressable market. You can't have just one winner in this. And some people will want a merchant recycling solution, but it's worth mentioning also we can sell plant packages to merchant recyclers as well. So I think we've got a foot in each camp, should we wish to. But for sure, I think this business model supports exactly where a lot of these big companies are going. And frankly, their strategies with regards to how to get exposure to recycling, they're evolving too. I mean, they're big companies, but equally they've got a lot on their plates. They've got to figure out rocks now. They've got to figure out making batteries. It's all new. EVs are new. And there's a lot going on. So I think there's a very big space for companies like us who are doing a job of recycling the majority of the materials and also doing it in a sustainable way.
And have you chosen to enter into joint ventures? One is a means of buying into expertise with your JV partner, but also as a means of finding a partner with deep pockets?
Yeah, for sure. I think historically we've always had a comfort level with working with partners, and we've even sought them out. We had a joint venture at Mount Marion, which was our upstream lithium mine that we sold out of, and we brought in two very big partners. And we did that because someone else development funded the project, which was nice. And then we also brought in the off-taker into the equation. It meant the mine got built at the appropriate scale and at speed so that we were actually well past our teething issues before other people were starting commissioning. And that same rationale works for these other projects, looking to expedite with partners who have skills that we don't, but that are complementary to our own skills.
It's quite brave and bold to build plant for people like Mercedes, because if it doesn't work, they're going to find out that it doesn't work pretty quickly. So there's no wiggle room, and you can't sort of hide the flaws, really. So what's your thoughts on that?
First thought is let's not make any errors with Mercedes or others. But no, you're absolutely right. In terms of, I mentioned the pipeline, so you can see Mercedes and Stelco, and, there's a third company, a Japanese group called Itoshu, who we've got an MOU with. But it takes a very long time behind the scenes, diligence. With Mercedes, it took 18 months before we were in a position to announce, the relationship, and there was an MOU for a long time that sat under the radar. And, they, for example, are a particularly exacting customer, and I think most will be. So you can assume if we've got this far, there's some elements to what we're doing that, that do work and make sense to very big companies, and we'll work closely with them. And the idea behind helping them with a pilot facility first is, of course, we need to scale up the refining section as well. We have the benefit of working with them to do that. And then, we roll these out and we make them increasingly larger over time, and the economics just get better and better with economies of scale. But we want to do it gradually in a stepwise fashion because we don't want to make mistakes, as you say.
Okay, and here we go. My final question. Can I just broadly ask you about funding? You're doing such big projects with big clients, great new innovative business model. How have you funded yourself to this point? How have you filled in the funding gaps?
So we've had for a long time a very strong balance sheet because we, in several stages, sold down equity in the Mount Marion lithium mine to our partners. We returned a lot of money back to shareholders, some 85 million Australian dollars over the journey. And so, that's given us a strong cash balance to pursue the R&D and the mineral processing technologies which we've developed. Going forward, of course, we're listed, and, one of the reasons for being in a listed environment is having access to pools of liquidity. That's why we listed on that AIM. We didn't raise money at the time, which is probably why, to date we've been under the radar a little bit, because at that point we didn't need it. We wanted to raise awareness about what we were doing. And then going forward, this licensing and royalty model is not by accident. That model itself means that you don't need to pay for the plants. So the CapEx burden, if you like, it's not there. It's not relevant. So going forward, we've got partners, they're co-funding. We're trying to avoid CapEx spend, and then we're listed. So at the point in time that it makes sense to get market support, then of course that's available to us. But I think really the answer is looking to generate, royalty earnings, and then that will support some of these other business units as they too come up through the development curve and get more and more mature.
Jeremy McManus, you're a complete star. Thank you for joining us from Perth, Australia tonight in the middle of the night. That is an absolutely fascinating business model and extremely well explained. Thank you so much.